This video is a work of fiction. While inspired by real people and events from 1970s America, the story, letters, and mysterious occurrences are entirely imagined. Close your eyes for a moment and let yourself drift back to a strangely quiet morning in 1977. The air around Graceland hangs heavy with a kind of stillness where even the wind seems to hesitate at the gate. Inside the mansion, the halls are dim. A single lamp casts a soft glow on an old framed photo of Elvis in his early days. In the kitchen, the faint smell of last night's coffee still lingers. A security guard yawns, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. And then, a single envelope appears at the front door. No footsteps approaching. No engine pulling away. No shadow stretching across the porch. As if the envelope simply materialized there. Nothing is written on it. No name. No address. Not even a postal stamp. The guard lifts it and notices something odd. The paper isn't warm from the morning air. It's cold. Unnaturally cold. He hesitates because this is no fan letter. He opens it and inside there's nothing. Nothing except one sentence. We have been watching. We chose him. In that moment, the quiet around Graceland seems to vibrate, like the soft static of an old television searching for a signal. This is where the story begins, right in the heart of 1970s America. Glowing neon signs, dusty gas stations, late-night DJs whispering secrets into the dark. This is the tale of the fake alien letters sent to Elvis Presley. Letters so strange, so calm, so out of place, that in 1977, some people weren't sure whether to laugh or to wonder. And if you remember the 70s, the warm summer nights, the hum of old TVs, the scent of vinyl, the radio hosts who felt like they were talking only to you, this story may already be sitting somewhere in the back of your memory. Because this isn't just Elvis's story. It's the story of a time when America still danced with mystery. When every strange light on the horizon sparked a new possibility. When a single letter could change the course of an entire night. So sit back, stay with me. We've got a 50-minute journey ahead of us. We're going to read the letters, follow the quiet footsteps behind them, and walk straight into the soft, eerie glow of 1977. But first, a single question. Or why would someone call Elvis the chosen one? The answer started with a late-night radio broadcast, and with a message that was never supposed to reach Graceland. Most legends begin with a moment of glory, but this one started with a tiny fracture in the silence. A subtle disturbance, just as the first pale light of dawn touched the grounds of Graceland. That morning, everything looked normal on the surface. A thin layer of mist filtered through the trees, making the estate appear older, softer, as if time itself had slowed. Even the animals moved differently, as though the day hadn't fully awakened yet. But the night guard, a man who had walked the same paths for years, who knew Graceland's rhythms better than his own heartbeat, felt something was wrong long before he reached the gate. He wasn't just another employee. He was someone who understood the house, the grounds, the routines. Someone who could tell from Elvis's expression whether he wanted company or to be left alone. He had a sense for disturbances, and on that morning, the air itself felt heavier, different, like a radio signal flickering into static for half a second. Then he saw it. A single envelope lying just inside the gate. At first, he thought someone had dropped their mail, but when he stepped closer, the unease in his chest grew. The envelope didn't look placed. It looked delivered without touch. There were no footprints in the gravel, no tire marks, no signs of anyone approaching the gate throughout the night. And yet the envelope was spotless, perfect, as if it had been set down in a clean room minutes earlier. The paper itself was strange. It didn't fold like normal paper. It didn't feel warm or cold. It felt neutral, almost emotionless, somewhere between plastic and paper, but not fully either. Years later, people who examined it would describe it as not something from the 1970s, more like something from 100 years in the future. But the most unsettling part wasn't the material. It was the writing. It wasn't handwriting. It wasn't typewriting either. It sat in an uncanny space between the two. Too sharp for a pen, too organic for a machine. Every letter matched the others perfectly. as if written by someone incapable of making mistakes. Inside the envelope was a single line. "We have watched him for years. His voice was never meant for Earth." And that line didn't read like a claim. It read like a statement, a quiet, confident observation, the kind that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up without knowing why. At first, the guards dismissed it. Elvis received strange letters all the time. Fan obsessions, pranks, wild UFO claims. It came with fame. But around noon, another guard spoke up. He said that around 3 a.m., he'd seen a white light hovering near the trees. Not swaying, not moving, just there. Silent, slowly pulsing. Then gone. Not a car, not a flashlight, not anything he could identify. He didn't connect it to the envelope at first, but after he heard the contents, he wasn't so sure anymore. That night, the staff gathered in the back rooms, trying to convince themselves it was nothing. Just a bizarre letter from an overzealous fan. But the more they talked, the more their stories overlapped in ways that didn't feel accidental. And that was when the second letter appeared. This time it wasn't at the gate. It was inside the property, lying on the dirt path Elvis used to walk when he wanted privacy, which meant someone had entered the grounds. Or the envelope had appeared on its own. It was made of the same strange material, the same cold neutral texture, the same flawless writing. But the message inside was far more unsettling. This one contained a date, and not just any date, a date that matched one of Elvis's private, unannounced recording sessions. The kind only a handful of people knew about. The kind that never appeared in newspapers, schedules, or radio chatter. Whoever was sending the letters knew Elvis's movements intimately. The staff checked the handwriting against everything they had. Years of fan mail, employee records, old letters from friends and collaborators, even Elvis's own archives. No match, not even close. No one recognized it. Not family, not friends, not the people who'd been by his side for decades. It was as if the letters came from someone incredibly close to Elvis, someone who knew his habits, his schedule, his world, yet someone who had never been seen. Elvis Presley walked slowly down the dimly lit hallway of Graceland. His hand tightened around the second letter until the paper felt cold against his skin. The first message had already unsettled him in ways he didn't dare explain to anyone. This strange sense that he had reached beyond the human mind and brushed against something else, something he couldn't name. But this second letter, this one felt different, more deliberate, more organized, more aware. The envelope looked like any ordinary piece of American mail from the 1970s, but the moment Elvis touched it, a delicate static tingled across his fingers. It was as if the message inside wasn't just ink and paper, but a piece of information that bent the air around it. Something carrying a faint pressure that didn't belong to this place or time. He didn't open it with the brass scissors on his desk. Instinct told him not to. Instead, he tore it open with his hands, raw, direct. Something deep inside him whispered that he needed that physical contact. Only a few lines were written inside, short, sharp, and far more disturbing than the strange phrases from the first letter. "Elvis, the stars are moving faster now. The signal is almost in range. You heard it last night. We know you did." His heart stumbled for half a second, because the truth was, he had heard something. A few nights earlier, a strange hum drifted over Graceland, a sound too rhythmic to be wind, too wide in frequency to be any engine he knew. It wasn't like a machine or nature or anything man-made. It pulsed in a pattern, almost like someone was trying to speak through it. Elvis swallowed hard and continued reading. "There isn't much time left. The second marker is already behind you. Look where the shadows don't belong." That last line lodged itself deep inside him. Look where the shadows don't belong. Elvis knew every inch of Graceland, every corner, every light angle, every creak in the floorboards. But suddenly, with that one sentence, the entire house felt unfamiliar, like the building itself had shifted in some subtle, unnatural way. The hall felt narrower, the light less warm, the shadows longer than they should have been. It felt like he was no longer alone in his own home, like something unseen was inside with him, watching. He stepped into the living room. Even the gold records hanging on the walls seemed different, reflecting the light in a slow, breathing shimmer, as if the metal itself had come alive. He placed the letter on the table and read it again, and again, and again, 10 times in total. Each time he noticed something new. Some letters were printed just slightly lighter, barely noticeable, but Elvis's eyes caught them. When placed together, they formed one word: North. Elvis's stomach tightened. He turned toward the northern windows of Graceland. That area was always darker than the rest of the property. Dense trees, heavy shadows, but tonight, it wasn't just dark. It was pitch black, an unnatural black, like the color had been erased from the world. And within that blackness, something was moving, or trying very hard to remain still. A shape, a silhouette, a distortion, like a shadow cast by something that wasn't physically there. Elvis felt a chill crawl up his spine. The words from the letter pulsed in his mind. The stars are moving faster now. The signal is almost in range. Every lamp in the room seemed suddenly inadequate. Light created shadows, and hiding in shadows was exactly what the letter warned him about. This wasn't just a message. It wasn't even a threat. This second letter was a summons, a call. Someone or something wasn't just communicating with Elvis. It was drawing him in, trying to bring him closer, pulling him toward the blackness that waited just beyond the glass. And for the first time in his life, Elvis Presley wasn't sure if the thing calling his name was from this earth at all. The northern side of Graceland was drowning in a darkness so thick it looked almost solid, like the night itself had grown heavier. As Elvis stared out the window, the shadows seemed to ripple, shifting with a slow, deliberate pulse, as if the darkness was breathing. Whatever was out there wasn't moving like an animal, and it certainly wasn't shaped like a person. It moved in a way that didn't belong to any living thing he'd ever seen. Right then, everything inside the house responded. Every electronic device, TV, radio, tape machine, console amp, gave a sharp synchronized tremor. The lights flickered once, twice. Then a high-pitched vibration filled the air, so faint it was almost imaginary, yet so deep it rattled Elvis's chest. He pressed a hand to his heart. It wasn't beating faster. It was matching the frequency, like the sound had reached inside his body and found the rhythm of his blood. Suddenly the radio snapped on by itself. No station, no song, just a low hum, thick, metallic, and beneath it, something that almost resembled a voice. Not quite human, not quite mechanical, something in between. Elvis froze. He had heard this before. That night a mysterious resonance had drifted over the Graceland grounds, a sound so strange he had convinced himself it must have been wind echoing off the trees or a distant engine misfiring. But deep down he knew it wasn't. And now it was back, closer, clearer, stronger, like whatever produced it wasn't whispering anymore. It was trying to talk. As the hum grew louder, the lamps in the room flickered violently, casting long, unnatural shadows that stretched across the walls as if they were alive and reaching outward. The gold records on the walls vibrated softly, humming along as if they, too, were reacting to the frequency. Then, through the static, a distorted voice broke through. "Elvis, we're almost there." The words hit him like a shockwave. The voice didn't sound like any human voice he'd ever heard. It wasn't coming from a mouth. It was coming from somewhere deep, distant, and impossibly old. A voice that seemed to echo across miles, or maybe across something far bigger than distance. The air in the house thickened, pressing against Elvis's skin like invisible weight. Every corner felt crowded, as if the room had gained an extra presence. Something unseen, standing close, too close, studying him. Elvis stepped back, but the frequency followed as if it were tethered to him. Every movement he made, it responded. Every breath, it shifted. It was as if the sound wasn't just noise, it was aware. Then the radio spoke again. This time, the message was sharper. Urgent. Don't look outside. Elvis's breath caught, because 5 seconds earlier, that's exactly what he had done. He looked outside, straight into the darkest corner of his property. He tried to pull his gaze away from the window now, but something inside him resisted, freezing half his body in place. It felt like an invisible hand had wrapped around his shoulders, guiding him to keep looking at the northern darkness. And then, everything stopped. The lights froze in the middle of their flicker, caught between on and off. The vibration in the floorboards quieted. Even the shadows stopped swaying, hanging in the air as still as painted shapes. The hum vanished. For a moment, Graceland fell into a silence, so heavy it felt unnatural, like the world had been muted. And that's when Elvis saw it. Out there, in the crushing dark beyond the glass, two lights blinked open. Not headlights, not lanterns, not anything powered by human hands. These lights were cold, steady, and impossibly sharp, glowing with a precision that felt almost intelligent. They didn't just shine, they focused. On him? On Elvis Presley. A pinpoint connection, direct and knowing, as if whatever was behind those lights had traveled a long, long way just to find him tonight. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a target. The lights didn't move closer, but Elvis could feel them reaching into the room, searching, analyzing, waiting. For what, he didn't know, but he felt in his bones that whatever approached wasn't done with him, not even close, because now it had found him. Elvis could feel the weight of that second letter, settling on him in a way he hadn't experienced in years. It was as if the words on the page carried a pulse of their own. Steady, cold and deliberate. Even Graceland, usually alive with the hum of people moving around, felt strangely muted that night. Every sound echoed differently, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to make sense of the message he never asked for. He moved slowly across the living room, the shag carpet muffling his steps as he held the folded letter between his fingers. He read it once, twice, then a third time, and each read left him with more questions. Whoever wrote it not only knew unsettling details about his life, details that a casual fan could never access, but they also knew how to speak directly to the part of Elvis that feared the unknown. Elvis finally broke and called Charlie Hodge. Charlie showed up in minutes, still half awake, thinking Elvis wanted to jam or reminisce. But one glance at Elvis's face, pale, tense, eyes unfocused, told him this wasn't about music. Elvis handed him the letter wordlessly. Charlie's eyebrows tightened as he read. "These symbols," he whispered. "I've seen something similar, but not like this. Not this precise. Not this intentional." Elvis sat down, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "Charlie, this isn't just some fan messing around. This feels targeted, like someone wants my attention for a reason." Unsettled, Elvis decided they needed help. He called in his inner circle, old friends, trusted employees, and Lamar Fike, the one man Elvis knew who could dig through chaos until he found a thread worth pulling. Lamar, with his background in journalism and his obsession with fringe theories, didn't laugh when he saw the letter. He didn't dismiss it. He didn't even blink. He simply said, "Let's find out who wants to talk to you this badly." They started with the basics: postal route, handwriting, stamps. Nothing about the letter was casual. Everything was carefully curated, right down to the ink density. The postmark pointed to a small, sleepy Texas border town, dusty roads, diners that hadn't changed since the 50s, and a post office that processed more bills than personal letters. The idea that a message like this originated there didn't make sense. It was too elaborate, too calculated, unless, Lamar suggested, the sender wanted it to look that way, because it's the last place anyone would look twice. As they traced information, things only grew stranger. No records of the sender's name. No street matching the address. It wasn't a typo. The address simply did not, and never had, existed. Elvis felt something unsettling settle in his stomach. Someone was going through a remarkable amount of effort to reach him, but hiding all evidence of themselves in the process. Late that night, Elvis voiced something he had been trying to suppress. What if this isn't a joke? What if someone out there knows something we don't? Charlie tried to ground him, but even his voice carried uncertainty. Maybe. But if this is a joke, it's one hell of a sophisticated one. More calls, more questioning, more dead ends. until they found a sliver of truth. An elderly clerk at the Texas post office recognized the envelope almost immediately. His eyes sharpened as he leaned forward, recalling the moment clearly, like it had branded itself into his memory. He described the man who dropped it off. Tall, still, almost unnaturally calm. The clerk said the stranger didn't speak right. His tone flat, his cadence off, like his voice was borrowed. The thing that struck him most was this. He never blinked, not once, not even when I asked if he needed anything else. That one detail hit Elvis harder than the rest. Something inside him tightened, an instinct he couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore. This wasn't just a mystery anymore. This was a message, one carefully delivered, one impossible to dismiss. And deep in his gut, Elvis knew something else with chilling certainty. Whoever sent that second letter wasn't finished. The moment the elderly clerk uttered those 3 chilling words, he never blinked. Something inside Elvis's team snapped into focus. It wasn't fear in the usual sense. It wasn't the kind that made you run or hide. It was the deeper kind, the kind that presses against the edges of your instincts until everything feels sharper, sound, breath, even the space between heartbeats. Something about that description felt wrong, wrong in a way that didn't fit into normal life, wrong in a way that made the air feel heavier. Lamar leaned forward, his hands pressed against the counter as though he could squeeze more truth out of the old man. What did he look like? Was he tall, thin? Did he have any scars? Anything that stood out? The clerk squinted, searching through the fog of his memory. He was tall, yes, but not in a natural way, almost like he was stretched upward. His clothes were too plain to remember, like he could disappear into a crowd if he wanted, except nobody that still is easy to overlook. Charlie exchanged a glance with Elvis. Still? Yeah, the clerk muttered. Still, like he didn't breathe, like he was only pretending to be human. That last sentence lingered in the air for several seconds before anyone spoke again. It clung to Elvis's mind like static, refusing to let go. Returning to Graceland, when they arrived back in Memphis, the mood inside Graceland shifted. The house, normally filled with warmth, chatter, and the comforting chaos of friends and staff, felt unnaturally quiet, as though whatever force had sent those letters had already found its way inside. They converted one of the private lounges into a full investigation room. The air smelled faintly of old books, black coffee, and tension. On one wall, Lamar pinned a map of Texas, then Colorado, then the surrounding states. Threads of red, blue, and yellow yarn intersected at points that made no sense to anyone but him. Elvis sank into a leather chair at the head of the table. "What are we missing?" he asked quietly. "Something buried," Lamar replied, tapping the second letter. "Something they want us to see, but only after we've earned it." Charlie lifted the letter under a stronger lamp. The symbols looked even more precise now, almost carved instead of written. "This isn't casual doodling," he said. "This has structure. It's like a language we're not supposed to know," Elvis whispered. "Or one we were meant to learn." The coordinates emerge. They scanned the letter again, searching for anything they may have overlooked. Hours passed. Ashtrays filled. Coffee turned cold. And then, Lamar paused mid-breath. "Hold on." He tilted the paper slowly, just enough for the light to catch something faint, almost invisible. A tiny indentation under one line of text, so delicate it could only be seen at a perfect angle. He grabbed a soft graphite pencil and, with the precision of an artist, shaded the back. The marks darkened. A pattern emerged. Then numbers. 103.153 gravi. Elvis leaned in, the tension rippling through him. "Are those?" "Coordinates," Lamar confirmed. "Somebody wanted you to find this. Somebody who knows exactly how to send a message without leaving fingerprints." Charlie rushed to the map, flipping through atlases until he stopped, eyes widening. "Oh man, Elvis, this isn't good." Lamar traced his finger across the map. "It's Colorado, middle of nowhere, desert plains, abandoned settlements, Restricted zones, government land. Elvis swallowed slowly. Military? Lamar shook his head. No, if it were military, it would at least have a name. This area is unmarked, intentionally unmarked. A deeper realization. For a long moment nobody spoke. The room felt smaller, like the walls had pulled inward. Elvis rubbed his forehead, trying to process the avalanche of information. These letters, they're not just warnings. No, Lamar said. They're invitations. Someone wants you there. Charlie's voice cracked with unease. Why Elvis, though? Out of millions of people, why him? Lamar hesitated, his tone dropping to a near whisper. Because Elvis isn't just famous. He's tuned in, sensitive. People underestimate that about him. But whoever wrote these letters didn't. Elvis looked up sharply, but didn't deny it. For years he'd felt things he couldn't explain, sensed things before they happened, dreamed things that later turned out true. This wasn't random. It couldn't be. The decision to go. As the team layered every clue into one picture, the truth became impossible to ignore. These letters weren't meant to stop Elvis. They were guiding him, pulling him, leading him towards something in the Colorado desert that someone didn't want anyone else to find. Elvis stood slowly, the leather chair creaking behind him. We're going, he said quietly. Charlie's eyes widened. Elvis, that land could be dangerous. Elvis nodded. I know, Lamar asked. Then why go? Elvis stared at the symbols one more time, feeling the same strange pull he felt the night he got the letter. Because if I don't follow this, it'll follow me. No one argued, not because they agreed, but because deep down, they knew Elvis was right. The letters were only the beginning. The truth, whatever shape it took, waited at those coordinates. When Elvis Presley went looking for the missing letters, the mystery stopped being just a bizarre footnote in a celebrity's life. It became something personal, something that crawled under his skin and refused to let go. During the day, Graceland buzzed with people, noise, movement. But at night, when the mansion got quiet and the world finally loosened its grip on him, Elvis found himself haunted by the words written in those strange envelopes. There was something in them, an energy, a tone, a familiarity that made him feel singled out, chosen, observed. The idea of a journey mentioned in the letters kept replaying in his mind. It was subtle at first, a harmless curiosity, but night after night, it grew heavier, like a whisper turning into a pull. It wasn't fear. It wasn't excitement either. It was something in between, something he couldn't name. And maybe that unknowable feeling was why he finally gave in. One unusually quiet Tennessee night, he slipped past the Graceland gates, driving alone with nothing but his thoughts and the soft glow of the dashboard lights. The roads were empty, the kind of empty that only the deep south could produce. Long stretches of asphalt surrounded by forests, fields, and unlit silence. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't need to know. The road felt like it was choosing for him, bending and stretching like it had been expecting him for years. The radio gave him nothing but static, but even the static felt meaningful, like someone was trying to speak through the fuzz. Occasionally the static rose in pitch, almost like a coded message buried inside the noise. Elvis kept glancing at the radio, half expecting it to snap into clarity with a voice calling his name. But all he heard was that soft, persistent hiss. Miles later, the world behind him had completely vanished. No streetlights, no passing cars, no signs of life except the moon hanging above him like a dim spotlight. The darker it got, the calmer he felt, as if the quiet was finally giving him permission to breathe. Out here, away from the cameras, the rumors, the expectations. He was just a man following something he didn't fully understand. Then, after what felt like hours, he saw it. A worn-down gas station sitting crooked on the side of the road. It looked frozen in time, untouched since the early 50s. The gas pump was rusted like an old relic. The price numbers stuck mid-rotation. The windows cloudy with dust, thick enough to write entire novels on. But the strangest part wasn't what he saw. It was what he felt. The closer he got, the more the air vibrated with a faint buzz. Not mechanical, not electrical, something else. He stepped out of the car slowly, listening. The environment felt too still, like the world around him was paused. Even the crickets had gone silent. He walked toward the entrance of the station, and that's when he noticed it. A yellow envelope half buried in the dust, right at the threshold of the door, as if someone had placed it there with absolute intention. Elvis froze. There was no wind, no footsteps, no sound, yet somehow that envelope was waiting for him. He knelt and picked it up carefully, brushing off the dust with a slow, deliberate motion. His pulse thudded in his ears. Inside the envelope could be anything. A warning, a message, a clue, maybe even the missing piece that connected the earlier letters. And yet holding it felt strangely familiar, like he had always known he would find this exact envelope in this exact place. Just as he was about to tear it open, a low humming grew behind him, deep, resonant, unnatural. It didn't sound like a car engine. It didn't sound like a plane either. It sounded alive. The sound swelled, rushing through the trees and across the road, followed by a streak of pale light that sliced across the sky. Elvis turned sharply and spotted it, a single floating point of brightness, moving slowly overhead. Not fast like a jet, not clumsy like a helicopter, smooth, silent, intentional, like it was watching him. The light hovered for a heartbeat, long enough for Elvis to feel its presence, its awareness before gliding away into the horizon, swallowing itself back into the night. Elvis stood there frozen, envelope in hand, breath thick in his throat. Whatever this was, it wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. This wasn't just a detour. This was a beginning, and the journey into nowhere he'd set out on was becoming the most important road he had ever taken. A road that didn't want to end. A road that had been waiting for him long before he realized he was on it. The yellow envelope felt strangely warm in Elvis's hands, as if it had been left out in the sun. Yet the night around him was cool, almost chilly. The texture of the paper was different from the previous letters. Thicker, older, almost brittle. It didn't feel like something written recently. It felt like something that had been waiting. Elvis took a slow breath before sliding his finger under the seal. It resisted. Not much, but enough to feel intentional. Like someone had closed it knowing it wouldn't be opened by just anyone. When the seal finally gave way with a dry crack, the envelope released a faint scent. Old paper, dust, and something he couldn't name. Something metallic, almost electric. Inside was a single folded sheet, cream-colored, edges slightly frayed, handwriting slanted and sharp. He unfolded it. There were only 7 sentences, short, precise, almost like coordinates in the form of thoughts. The first line froze him. You weren't supposed to find this place yet. Elvis felt a chill travel up his spine. The gas station, the timing, the envelope waiting at his feet. He read on. The others will be searching for you now. Keep moving. The others? The phrase ripped through his mind. Who were the others? Fans? Reporters? Or something else? Something connected to the light in the sky? The crickets were still silent. Even the breeze had died. The entire world seemed to be leaning in, listening with him. The next lines were even stranger. Do not trust the voice when it comes. It will sound familiar. Elvis swallowed hard. The static on the radio. Was that the voice? Or was something else coming? He tightened his grip on the letter. The 6th sentence felt like a warning meant only for him. Your journey has already begun, whether you understand it or not. He stepped back instinctively, as if the truth in those words pushed him physically. His car sat behind him, dark and silent. The road stretched endlessly in both directions, leading nowhere and everywhere at the same time. Then he read the final line, a line written slightly darker than the rest, the pen pressing deeper into the page. Turn around. Elvis froze. Every hair on his arms rose. He hadn't heard a sound behind him, hadn't sensed movement, but someone, or something, expected him to look. For a moment he didn't breathe. Then slowly, very slowly, he began to turn. As Elvis turned his head back, time seemed to stretch. His movements slowed, and a low humming grew inside his ears. It felt as if the world itself was bracing for what he was about to see. When his shoulders finally shifted enough, he saw nothing at first. Just darkness, the dense trees on both sides of the road, and the kind of silence that swallows the night whole. But then, somewhere deep in the darkness, a faint light flickered, like someone far away was flashing a small flashlight. Yet there was intention in the rhythm. It wasn't random. As it grew closer, Elvis realized the light wasn't coming from a human hand. It was too smooth, too steady, too conscious. Elvis stepped back. His heart sped up, but it wasn't fear. It felt more like the awareness of being caught in the middle of something. Then a detail hit him. The light was coming from the same direction as that bright object he had seen streak across the sky minutes earlier. Elvis tightened his grip on the envelope. At that exact moment, the station's old neon sign, clearly dead for years, let out a sharp buzz, a brief flash, then total darkness again. But in that split-second flash, one of the shadows at the edge of the road moved. Elvis gasped sharply, because the shadow looked human-shaped. But it didn't move like a human. It didn't step. It glided, silent, precise, like a perfect line sliding forward. He staggered backward. Gravel crunched under his shoes. Right then, the light flickered again, and for an instant, the shadow sharpened into focus. Elvis's eyes widened. The disturbing part wasn't that the shape looked human. It was that it looked almost like him. For a split second, he saw his own profile in its silhouette. The resemblance was unnervingly close. But there was a problem. This thing was taller, thinner, its face too smooth, too uniform, missing all the tiny imperfections a real human face collects from simply living. Elvis swallowed hard. His fingers trembled around the envelope. And then he remembered that line in the letter, written in dark, heavy ink. Turn around. What if it didn't mean look? What if it was a warning? What if he was supposed to turn away, not toward it? The shadowy figure stopped when it noticed the envelope in his hand, as if it recognized it, as if it had been waiting for it. Then the last thing Elvis ever expected happened. The shadow spoke, not in its own voice, but in his, a warped, filtered, metallic version of Elvis's own tone. You opened the wrong letter. Elvis's breath hitched. Impossible. The voice was like an echo of his own, twisted and hollow. The abandoned gas station, the suffocating forest, and this impossible being pressing in from the darkness. It was all collapsing around him at once. The shadow glided closer. The light hit it again, and this time, Elvis saw something he wished he hadn't. It had no eyes, just two deep hollow pits, like empty sockets carved into darkness itself. And those pits were locked directly onto the envelope in his hand. Elvis tightened his grip on the envelope as he stumbled backward, but the shadowy figure didn't advance. It simply stood there, suspended in the darkness, like a cutout from another world that had slipped into this one by accident. For a moment nothing moved. Not the trees, not the air, not even Elvis. It felt as though the entire night had paused, waiting. Then, the shadow's form rippled, a subtle flicker, as if the darkness itself had exhaled. And from deep within that void a voice rose, a warped imitation of Elvis's own voice. Distorted, metallic, stretched thin. Where do you think you're going? Elvis's throat tightened. The words didn't sound like a threat. If anything, they sounded like a statement of fact, as if this thing already knew the answer and was testing him. The figure drifted backward into the trees, not walking, but sliding, smooth, deliberate, as if gravity wasn't a rule it needed to follow. It wasn't retreating. It was inviting him. Elvis felt his body react before his mind caught up. One step forward, then another, drawn by something he couldn't explain. Each step made the low humming from the forest grow stronger. It wasn't coming from the creature. It was coming from everywhere. From the branches, from the soil under his boots, from the thick night air itself. It was like the forest was alive and aware and watching him. The voice echoed again, closer this time, yet without direction. You didn't want the truth. A pause, almost compassionate. But now it's too late not to see it. A chill crawled down Elvis's spine. He wanted to turn and run back toward the empty highway, but something deeper kept him rooted. It was the voice, not because it was strange, but because it felt familiar on a level that unnerved him. It was like hearing his own thoughts spoken aloud by something that shouldn't have access to them. When Elvis reached the tree line, the figure stopped as if expecting him. Another pulse of light washed through the woods, illuminating the shape for a brief second. And Elvis froze, because this time, the figure didn't just resemble him. It mirrored him, a younger version, taller, smoother, untouched by fame or pressure or the heaviness of being known. A face without time, without history, almost like the memory of who he once was, or who he might have been, in a different world. The younger shadow Elvis tilted its head, and when it spoke again, the metallic filter thinned. Now it sounded almost lifelike, almost real. This letter wasn't meant for you, Elvis. This letter wasn't meant for you, Elvis. Elvis's breath caught. The voice grew darker, heavier, a cold truth wrapped in familiarity. This letter was meant for the version of you that came before you. Elvis felt something inside him collapse, like the ground beneath his identity had shifted. Before he could react, the figure stepped closer. The forest hummed louder. The envelope's edges pressed into his palm, and the air grew thick enough to choke on. The shadow leaned in just enough for Elvis to see the empty pits where its eyes should have been. Two hollow voids reflecting nothing but the envelope in his hand. And the voice, his own voice, whispered again, softer this time. You should have never opened it. The hum in the forest cut off all at once. Dead silence. It was as if an invisible hand had reached into the night and pulled every sound away. Elvis froze, locked on the empty eye sockets of the young shadow version of himself. There were no eyes, but somehow it was still looking, even recognizing him. His hand trembled over the envelope, involuntarily, and that tremble echoed across the shadow's face, as if reflecting his own movements back at him. Why, the version of me before me? Elvis's voice cracked. He could feel his lips dry as he asked the question. The shadow Elvis tilted its head slowly, unnaturally human, yet impossible. Not breaking, not snapping, more like a machine adjusting a sensor. Then the metallic voice came again from the dark, because it could answer. The words slithered down Elvis's spine like an icy line. Answer what? Who was seeking those answers? He stepped back without thinking, but the shadow glided forward at the same pace. The distance stayed exactly the same, a balance that allowed no escape. What does the letter want from you? Elvis whispered now, voice trembling. The shadow's body pulsed, like a living being breathing. But this breath wasn't natural. It was more like something filling an empty vessel. It doesn't want anything from you. The shadow paused. A silence stretched. Then, it wants to remember you. Rustling rose from the forest, not the sound of animals. The sounds were rhythmic, step-like, motion-like, approaching something. When Elvis glanced to the other side, new shadows appeared in the darkness. Each one glided like the first. Each face carried the same distorted, smooth, inhuman, youthful likeness. Copies of young Elvis, wrong, flawed, like echoes from another world. The shadow Elvis spoke again. You are an echo. Elvis's eyes widened. A reflection. The shadow stepped closer, close enough for Elvis to feel its cold breath. The original existed before you. Elvis shook his head involuntarily. This is madness. The shadow's voice dropped. It seemed to rise from the roots of the forest, deep and resonant. The letter never came for you, Elvis. Its empty eye sockets slowly descended, locked on the envelope in Elvis's hand. The letter found you again. Then, the envelope in Elvis's hands began to tremble, as if the paper inside had a heartbeat. All the shadows in the forest lifted their heads at once, moving in sync with the rhythm of the envelope. And the young shadow Elvis spoke one final time. They already know you remember. The last words echoed through the forest. They are coming. Elvis's heart pounded like a drum. The silence of the forest pressed down on him, shadows still circling, watching every step. The envelope trembled in his hand, quivering as if whatever secret it held was alive, struggling to survive. Elvis knew there was only one choice left, to see the truth and face it. The shadow Elvis took a step closer, breaking the silence. There's no turning back. The letter came for you, and now it's your turn." Elvis froze. "My turn?" he whispered, barely recognizing the sound of his own voice. Suddenly the shadows in the forest stirred, rippling like the air itself had come alive. Elvis realized this wasn't just a letter. It was a call, a test. A faint glow emanated from the envelope, warm, soft light, like a long-lost spark that had been waiting for him. Elvis reached out and carefully opened the letter. On the paper were just 3 words. "Remember who you are." Those simple words unleashed a torrent of memories. Moments he had forgotten, fragments of his youth, pieces of himself he hadn't realized were missing. He faced his past, his younger self, the identity he had lost. The shadow Elvis slowly faded, retreating as if giving him permission to reclaim his memories. The forest fell silent. Only the wind stirred the leaves. Elvis sank to his knees, taking a deep breath. Fear, curiosity, and a strange sense of peace mingled inside him. The envelope remained in his hand, no longer a burden, but a guide. In that moment Elvis understood. The story had ended. But remembering meant starting anew. He closed his eyes, drew in a long, steady breath, and whispered, "I'm ready now." Disclaimer: the events in this video are fictional. Although it references real historical figures and settings from 1970s, America, the mysterious letters, shadowy figures, and paranormal happenings are purely imaginative. This video is meant to entertain and evoke nostalgia, not to document real events.